The Barrio 18 does not give up and is stronger than ever and fearless. They challenge Bukele once again. How did the president of El Salvador respond to this? Stay until the end of the video and discover it in the darkness of the night. San Salvador's Barrio 18 was filled with whispers and furtive glances among the narrow alleys and crowded houses. A group of men gathered in a secret corner. They were known as the Traitors, a disaffected faction in the Barrio 18 that had decided to challenge authority both inside and outside their organization. The leader of the Traitors, a man with cold eyes and implacable determination named Marcos, watched his companions with a mixture of pride and concern. "It is time to send a message to Nayib," Bukele said, his voice echoing in the silence. "The president must know that not everyone in the Barrio 18 is willing to follow their rules in the previous weeks. Bukele had intensified his campaign against the gangs by filling the prisons and taking drastic measures to restore order. However, his relentless approach had generated resentment among some members of Barrio 18, who felt they were treated as mere pawns in a power game. The gang members had decided to act. At the heart of their plan was a video that would show the brutality of their reprisals and send a clear and terrifying message to Bukele. The production of the video began with military precision. A victim was chosen, a traitor within the group itself, someone who had tried to sell information to the authorities in exchange for protection. On the night of the event, the gang members gathered in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The walls were covered in graffiti, and the echo of their footsteps created a somber and claustrophobic atmosphere in the center of the warehouse. A solitary chair awaited the victim. The man, blindfolded and with his hands tied, was taken to the chair. His breathing was rapid and shallow. His body was trembling. Marco approached, removing the blindfold with a quick and abrupt gesture. "It's time you knew what it means to betray your brothers," he murmured, turning on a camera to capture every detail. The video began with Marcos speaking directly to the camera. His face was stern and determined. "This message is for Nayib Bukele." He declared war on the gangs. "You have treated us like animals. You have locked us up without trial. You have broken up families and destroyed lives. But not all of us will remain silent." At his signal, the men around the victim began to move with precise and coordinated movements. They carried out a calculated act of violence, designing every detail so that the message was clear and terrifying. The video showed uncensored brutality, a chilling warning of what could happen if Bukele continued his campaign without considering the human consequences. While the camera continued to record, Marcos continued his message. "Bukele, we want you to know that not everyone in Barrio 18 is willing to endure your tyranny. We are the traitors, and we will fight for our dignity and freedom. This is just the beginning." The video ended with a still shot of the victim's bloody face, an image that would remain etched in the memory of all who saw it. With the footage in hand, the gang members set about spreading it using networks of contacts inside and outside of prison. The video was uploaded to the internet and shared on multiple platforms. Bukele's response. Nayib Bukele's response to the message from the Barrio 18 gang members was immediate and forceful. As the video spread, the nation was plunged into a state of panic. Shock. Bukele met with his security team at the presidential residence. The atmosphere in the meeting room was charged with anxiety. The faces of his advisors reflected the seriousness of the situation. Bukele, known for his direct and uncompromising style, wasted no time planning a response. "We cannot allow these criminals to think they are in control," he declared, his voice firm and authoritarian. "We will show them that there is no place for violence and terror in our country." The first step was to call a press conference. Bukele appeared before the national and international media, his face reflecting a mixture of anger and determination. With the video still fresh in everyone's mind, the president addressed the nation. "Today we have witnessed the cruelty of those who seek to destabilize our country. The gang members of Barrio 18 have shown that they are willing to resort to the most violent means, brutal to intimidate and terrorize. But let me be clear, we will not give in to their threats. Bukele announced a series of immediate and drastic measures. He first ordered a massive deployment of security forces in neighborhoods controlled by Barrio 18. Soldiers and police equipped with heavy weapons and armored vehicles began patrolling the streets, conducting raids and arrests in search of members of the gang. Operation Iron Hand was designed to eradicate any trace of resistance in a matter of hours. Neighborhoods became war zones. Raids were carried out with military precision, targeting the homes and hideouts of traitors. Clashes were inevitable, and the sound of gunfire and explosions echoed throughout the city. Simultaneously, Bukele used his dominance of social media to mobilize public opinion. He published messages on Twitter and Instagram denouncing the brutality of gang members and reaffirming his commitment to the country's security. "We will not allow criminals to rule our streets," El Salvador tweeted. The response was not limited to actions on the ground. He also called an emergency meeting with the leaders of the gang. The goal of the security forces and intelligence services was to dismantle the support and financing networks of Barrio 18, cutting off its sources of income and weakening its operational capacity. Meanwhile, in the heart of Barrio 18, tensions mounted. Although prepared for a violent response, the traitors did not expect the magnitude of the counterattack. Marcos and his men were forced to move constantly, changing hideouts and avoiding patrols in a desperate attempt to maintain their influence. The gang members continued to spread messages of resistance through social media and clandestine channels. However, each message was intercepted and responded to with even greater force by government forces. In the following days, the impact of Operation Iron Hand became evident. Dozens of gang members were arrested, including some of the traitors' leaders. The hideouts were dismantled and the weapons and drugs confiscated. The gang's communications network was severely damaged. Bukele, aware of the importance of gaining popular support, personally visited some of the areas most affected by gang violence during one of his visits, surrounded by cameras and media. He addressed local residents. "We are with you," he said. "You are not alone in this fight. Together, we will reclaim our streets and build a better future." The reaction of the people in El Salvador was mixed but charged with emotion. Many citizens, especially those who had suffered gang violence firsthand, applauded Bukele's firmness. They saw in their president a leader willing to take the necessary measures to protect his people. "Finally, someone is doing something," said a woman at a local market in San Salvador. "We are tired of living in fear." Bukele is doing what others did not dare to do. However, there are also those who they feared that Bukele's drastic actions could lead to an escalation of violence. "History could repeat itself," warned a human rights activist in a television interview. "If the social and economic roots of the problem are not addressed, we will simply be fueling the cycle of violence." Churches and community organizations also spoke out. Some religious leaders urged calm and dialogue, while others supported Bukele's actions, arguing that public safety was an immediate priority. Merchants and business owners, for their part, expressed hope that stability and security would improve the business climate. "We need a safe environment to prosper," said a local businessman. "If Bukele can achieve this, it will be a great step forward for everyone." Meanwhile, the families of the gang members and those arrested were experiencing moments of anguish and uncertainty. "Not everyone who was arrested is guilty," said the mother of a young man arrested during the protests. "A raid on my son. He was trying to get out of that life. Now I don't know what will happen to him." By the way, if you're enjoying the video, we invite you to give us your like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. We continue the reaction of the cecot prisoners inside the cells. The news of the gang members' message and the president's response arrived quickly. The inmates were heatedly discussing the implications of these actions. Some, especially the younger ones and newcomers, were fearful, while the veterans tried to maintain a facade of control and calm. The leadership of the gangs within the cecot was divided into two main factions. On one side were those who supported direct confrontation with the government, believing that showing weakness would only make them more vulnerable. Marcos, the leader of the Barrio 18 gang members, was one of the main defenders of this position. From their Zeldas sent messages to their followers. On the other hand, there was a faction that advocated for a more cautious strategy. This group, led by more pragmatic gang members, believed that open confrontation with Bukele would only result in more violence and repression. They argued that it was necessary to seek ways to negotiate or at least try to minimize conflicts to avoid further suffering and loss within the prison. The division between the gang factions did not go unnoticed by the guards and authorities at the cecot. Reports of altercations and growing tensions quickly reached the prison's top brass, who decided to intensify security measures. The cells they checked most frequently were further restricted. Movement within the prison was further restricted, and additional controls were established to prevent unauthorized communication between inmates. Meanwhile, common inmates, those who did not, they were affiliated with gangs and lived in a constant state of fear. They knew that any increase in tension could trigger violence at any moment. The days passed with a mix of tense silence and occasional outbursts of verbal and physical violence among gang members. Marcos himself began to feel the weight of his decisions. From his cell, he heard the echoes of arguments and fights. Although he maintained a defiant stance, he knew the situation was spiraling out of control. His own men began to question his leadership, and the fissures in the structure of Barrio 18 became more evident with each passing day. For Nayib Bukele, the news from the cecot was a constant reminder of the complexity of his fight against the gangs. The president met with his security team to discuss additional measures they could take to ensure stability within a prison. He ordered that surveillance be intensified and that any attempt at a riot be monitored. Was immediately suppressed. In the midst of this charged atmosphere, an unexpected event further aggravated the situation. An anonymous letter fell into the hands of one of the cecot guards. The letter, written in shaky handwriting, described a riot plot planned by some of the most radical gang leaders. The goal was to take control of a section of the prison and use the inmates as hostages to negotiate with the government. News of the plot quickly leaked out, increasing fear and paranoia within the cecot. Guards were on high alert and redoubled their efforts to prevent any attempted riot. Tensions peaked when, during a routine check, improvised weapons were discovered in several of the gang members' cells. In response to this discovery, authorities implemented a total lockdown. Inmates were confined to the cells and communications were completely cut off. The prison became a fortress, with guards constantly patrolling the halls and watchtowers. The Barrio 18 gang, also known as Barrio 18, is one of the most numerous gangs in the Western Hemisphere, comparable in many ways to its better-known rival, the Mara Salvatrucha MS-13. Although the gang has cells from Central America to Canada, it has been greatly weakened in El Salvador after an aggressive campaign launched by the Nayib Bukele government since March 2022. Salvadoran security forces imprisoned more than 10,000 alleged Barrio 18 members who remain at large. They either went underground or fled the country, but with thousands of members scattered throughout Central America and the United States, Barrio 18 continues. Being a criminal threat to the region, Barrio 18 emerged as a street gang in Los Angeles. Although some accounts place its origins in the late 1950s, the gang began to take its current form in the 1980s when it split from the gang. Clan 14 gained particular notoriety for its role in the Los Angeles riots after the acquittal of the police officers who brutally beat African-American motorcyclist Rodney King. In its early days, the group's many cells, known as cliques, were the exclusive purview of Mexican immigrants in Southern California and dominated neighborhoods like MacArthur Park in the Korean section of downtown Los Angeles. However, when other Latino nationalities joined the immigrant population, Barrio 18 began to recruit members from different backgrounds, a change that would facilitate expansion. In the late 1990s, a task force from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, and local authorities arrested some of the most prominent leaders of the Barrio 18 neighborhood. However, that didn't affect the gang as much as it gave them another base of influence, from which to operate and recruit new members. Federal prisons, despite efforts to isolate gang leaders from their contacts abroad and their imprisoned comrades. Barrio 18 gangs like Francisco Martinez, alias Poppet, devised ways to continue directing their criminal activities. From prison, some Barrio 18 members also joined the Mexican Mafia, a fearsome prison gang that grouped Southern California street gangs into a single, powerful confederation that became known as the Serenos. Outside prison, street gangs fight inside, forming a single structure under the direction of the Mafia. The specialized unit of the National Civil Police in the fight against organized crime announced to the media the capture of 17 members of the notorious Mara Salvatrucha MS gang charged for the kidnapping and alleged murder of a 23-year-old young man, which occurred in Santiago, Nanualco, in the Department of La Paz, located 42 kilometers southeast of the city. Among those arrested are 4 women and a teenager. During the course of the investigation, authorities were able to locate the address used as a detention center, clothing belonging to the young man at the time of his kidnapping, a portion of the ransom demanded, various cell phones and cars used during the crime, and various other items. In addition to the presumed burial site of the deceased body, the prison administration confirmed to the AP the transfer of 20 gang members responsible for coordinating kidnappings and extortions from various penitentiary facilities in the country to the high-security prison popularly known as Zacatraz, located on the outskirts of Zacatecoluca, 56 kilometers away, east of San Salvador. This action is part of the strategy against kidnappings and extortion. Investigations have allowed for the verification of their involvement in these crimes. Alberto Uribe, Director of Communications for Penal Institutions, told the AP. Public Security Minister René Figueroa informed the press about the implementation of a red alert in penitentiary centers due to the transfer of nearly 30 individuals involved in kidnappings considered highly dangerous to the maximum security prison. Some of those already incarcerated in the maximum security facility will be relocated to isolation cells. We're talking about individuals involved in kidnappings, highly dangerous criminals. He added that according to police investigations, gangs coordinate kidnappings, extortions, and murders from prisons using cell phones. Smuggled into El Salvador, police records show approximately 10,000 gang members, for which approximately 3,500 are held in various prisons throughout the country. The MS and Mara 18, 2 of the most feared factions in the country, are considered by authorities to be responsible for more than 50% of the crimes committed in the nation. Both gangs, with a significant presence in the country's main urban areas, maintain international ties and are associated with illicit activities such as drug trafficking, kidnapping, and extortion. Barrio 18 expanded southward into Mexico and Central America, primarily due to a change in immigration policies in the mid-1990s, which expanded the number of criminal charges for which a foreign-born resident could be deported to their country of origin. It was aggressively applied to gangs in California, where there were many gang members without U.S. citizenship. Deportations generated a sudden influx of Barrio 18 gang members and other groups to Central American countries and Mexico, which brought with it increased violence and crime in the late 1990s. Starting in El Salvador, Central American governments began passing stricter laws to criminalize even gang association. These policies, collectively called mano dura, heavy-handed, produced mass arrests of gang members that inadvertently fueled the growth of gangs by concentrating their members in prisons, which led them to reorganize and regroup on the streets. Barrio 18 ventured into drug dealing and extortion, increasing profits. The gang also began laundering money through small businesses, such as car washes. 2005. Internal conflicts led to the division of Barrio 18 into 2 factions. The revolutionaries and the Serenos continue to clash and fight with the same bitterness with which they confront the MS-13, their historic enemy and the largest street gang in Central America. The gang gained greater power in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, where it was able to take advantage of the weak governments and widespread exclusion. Social to expand into poor urban areas in those spaces, Barrio 18 began systematically extorting public transportation systems, displacing entire communities and entering politics. This became more evident in March 2012 when the leaders of the neighborhood and their rivals, the MS-13, participated in a national truce brokered by a government delegate and the Catholic Church. The homicide rate in the country fell by more than half after the negotiated ceasefire, but violence escalated again as soon as the truce failed. The leaders of the MS-13 and Barrio 18 proved alarmingly adept at capitalizing on the political capital they gained after the truce, raising concerns that the initiative could give them a means to increase their criminal sophistication and overall influence in the country. Adding to these concerns, extortions and disappearances allegedly continued to rise in El Salvador throughout the truce, and homicides resumed their rise in mid-2013, reaching a peak in 2015 before declining again. A radical drop in El Salvador's homicide rate starting in 2019 once again put the country's gangs in the spotlight. Government representatives attributed the drop to their national security plan. Multiple media reports spoke of an informal pact between sectors of the Salvadoran government and imprisoned gang leaders, according to which the latter would reduce murders in exchange for better prison conditions. This period of relative peace in El Salvador was shattered when several members of Barrio 18 and the MS-13 committed 4 homicides in a 3-day bloody campaign in November 2021. Following the indiscriminate massacre of 92 people, including civilians such as shoppers, vendors, and bus passengers, in March 2022, Barrio 18 was quick to distance itself from the massacre, which was interpreted as a visible attempt to send a message to the government. Enraged by the rampant violence, the government responded with the most comprehensive war on gangs in the country's history, arresting tens of thousands of suspected gang members during a state of emergency declared in March 2022 and still in effect in November 2023. This offensive has decimated the rank-and-file gang members of Barrio 18 and forced thousands to seek help for the first time in decades. The gang has lost control of key territories and criminal economies in areas where it previously exercised strict control. In November 2022, the Honduran President Xiomara Castro attempted to implement Bukele's offensive by declaring a state of emergency to confront the rise in extortion. But these measures have not made a dent in gang activities, and the ranks of Barrio 18 remain intact in Honduras. At the top are the palabreros, most of whom are incarcerated in the prison system. They coordinate all criminal activities. A palabrero keeps track of all financial transactions, homicides, drugs, and weapons. In El Salvador, 4 of the highest-ranking leaders of the Serenos faction, including Carlos Lettuce Mojica, alias El Viejo Lin, sent a voice note to the released members, asking them to stop the murders that shocked the country in November 2021. This led to speculation about a rift between the imprisoned leaders and the leaders on the streets. Although many of the leaders they were already in prison when the anti-gang campaign began in March 2020. Many of the leaders at large were captured or forced to flee. In Guatemala, a group known as La Rueda coordinates the activities of La Pandilla. Many of its members, including leader Aldo Dupi Ochoa Mejia, alias El Lobo, are in prison. Similarly, the main leaders of Barrio 18 in Honduras, such as Nahin Medina, alias Tacoma, operate behind bars abroad. The gang is organized into courts. A court is a territorial division that does not necessarily depend on municipal boundaries. Each court has several tribes. The smallest units of the Barrio 18 organization are finally collaborators who do not fully belong to the group or will never be part of it. These help the gang with minor tasks such as intelligence, gathering, and the transfer or storage of illicit goods. By the way, if you enjoy the video, we invite you to join, to give us your like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. We continue. Geography in Central America. The gang operates mostly in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. By mid-2023, it had more than 22,000 members. In El Salvador alone, the gang also has a significant presence in the United States, with an estimated 30,000 to 50,000 members. In the 2010s, The group operates in dozens of cities in nearly 20 states. Many of its members reside in California. However, Barrio 18 also has a presence in other western cities, such as Denver. Additionally, Barrio 18 has had a presence in Italy since the mid-2000s, and in September 2016, the capture of an alleged Barrio 18 leader revealed La Pandilla's desire to expand its presence in Europe. Spanish police warned of this danger when they arrested 15 Hondurans in 2023 who were said to be planning to establish a Barrio 18 clique in Barcelona. There have also been reports of a displacement of Barrio 18 members fleeing the government's campaign in El Salvador to southern Mexico. Allies and enemies. Barrio 18's greatest rival is the MS-13 in El Salvador. Barrio 18 is divided into factions. Rivals: the Revolutionaries and the Serenos, a division that usually leads to violence. The gang also has a close relationship with the Mexican mafia. It is known that they have a network of collaborators that includes lawyers, taxi drivers, and mechanics. On many occasions, the gang has been involved in clashes with state security forces during successive anti-gang campaigns in Central America. What happened to Old Lin after being captured and imprisoned under the incredible sentence of 1,000 years? Yes, as you've heard, 1,000 years, something that may seem ridiculous to many since it is impossible for someone to live for so long. However, this is not the worst thing that Old Lin had to go through. In prison, according to reports, he suffered various forms of torture and mistreatment by the police. Remember, as the leader of that gang, the hatred and resentment they had for him was not normal. Although the nickname he has can be even seeming adorable is not at all true, since in his hands, the most horrible tortures imaginable were carried out on people who were often innocent, but in Lin's eyes, were nothing more than a useless piece of meat. It didn't matter if he was cut and then voted. Although the veracity of whether he is still alive has not been confirmed, it is understood that if he is still alive, he is living through hell itself. Unfortunately, among his last victims, he was the son of a commander. While revenge is not good, I highly doubt that it is not being applied to him. Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele announced on Sunday the mobilization of 6,000 military and police personnel to combat the remaining bandit groups in the north of the country. This follows the murder of 2 individuals. Currently, 5,000 soldiers and 1,000 police officers have established a cordon in the municipalities of San Jose and Cancasque, San Antonio Los Ranchos Patanico, and San Isidro Labrador, with the goal of completely dismantling that faction, Bukele declared in X. He justified the action by mentioning that 2 murders recently occurred in that region, located about 90 kilometers north of San Salvador, and 2 leaders affiliated with the Barrio 18 Serenos gang were arrested. We will continue until we eliminate any trace of gangs, he warned on the platform, where he shared a video that shows the remarkable tactical deployment of forces and 2 arrested people kneeling in handcuffs. We will completely purify the region. We will eliminate every last trace of gang presence. Defense Minister Rene Francis Marino Monroy also expressed in X when detailing the operation in the southern area of Chalatenango. El Salvador has been under a state of emergency for years due to a Bukele decree resulting in the capture of nearly 76,000 people. Without prior judicial request, more than 7,000 of them were released for lack of culpability. Approximately 120,000 homicides were attributed to the gang phenomenon originating in the streets of Los Angeles, United States, in the last 30 years. This figure exceeds 75,000 deaths. During the 12 years of internal armed conflict between 1980 and 1992, after the conflict, Salvadoran citizens have faced the scourge of the MS-13 and Barrio 18 gangs, including their southern and revolutionary branches, which together numbered around 100,000 members. Human rights organizations have criticized the state of emergency, pointing to cases of unfounded arrests, torture, and deaths in prisons. And so we come to the end of this video. If you liked it, I invite you to give us a like so we can keep making more videos like this. Also, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. I wish you a great day. Until next time.